The Sims is a huge franchise, and I don't just mean in the sense that it's literally one of the best-selling video game series of all time, but in the sense that there just are a ton of Sims games. And not just expansion packs, though there are an obscene amount of those, but spin-off games. From the insane Y2K nightmare that is The Urbz to the fantastical and bizarre Sims Medieval to indeed The Sims Castaway, in which your goal is to help a group of shipwrecked Sims survive, explore, and eventually escape from an isolated island. Sound whack? Yeah, it kind of is. Skeletons, airplane crashes, earthquakes, sharks, and an ancient civilization of llama people, The Sims Castaway is an epic tale of island survival with a goofy Sims twist. In the first video of what I hope to become a series of examinations on the weird and wild spin-offs of the Sims series, today let's talk about The Sims Castaway. Before we jump in, I just want to give a huge thank you to Disney Speedstorm for sponsoring this video. Disney Speedstorm is an epic racing game featuring some of your favorite Disney and Pixar characters. Unlock dozens of characters with unique skills, race through gorgeous maps filled with iconic locations, secrets, and Easter eggs, and play your way with various different race styles. There are also tons of options for customization, from your racer to their racing suits, to the colors they wear, to their ride, and the way that you paint it. You can also choose to play solo or multiplayer with the option of offline split-screen multiplayer and online custom lobbies, so you can race players from all over the globe. Disney Speedstorm's new Frozen-inspired season, Let It Go, is out now, and tons of new races are joining the party, from Anna and Elsa to Kristoff and Olaf, and even Hans, as well as new tracks and minigames. Disney Speedstorm is now free to play after spending 3 seasons in early access and is available to download on console and PC, and yes, that means cross-platform racing is a feature. Disney Speedstorm's new season, Let It Go, is out. You can download the game for free on PC and consoles and start racing with some of your favorite Disney and Pixar characters. Scan the QR code on screen or click the link in the description to download for free today. A huge thank you to Disney Speedstorm for sponsoring this video, and now let's jump back into things. The Sims 2 Castaway, released in October of 2007, was the third console spin-off of The Sims 2. Interestingly, Castaway itself actually had a few spin-offs, one for PCs called Castaway Stories, which was similar but completely different at the same time, one for Nintendo DS, which looked predictably rough, and one for Nokia phones. Yeah, we'll touch on that madness later in the video, but for now let's just stick to the original PlayStation title. The Sims 2 Castaway is set on a series of deserted tropical islands which your shipwrecked Sims have landed on. Create a Sim takes place on a small yacht and allows you to make up to 6 Sims. My first Sim was Garphelia Goth, an ode to both the lasagna-eating feline and the missing woman from The Sims 2. I made her an Aquarius because that's what I am, and wasn't too pleased with how sloppy that made her. Not too stoked that that's apparently one of my defining traits, but whatever, moving on. Next was John Arbuckle. Naturally, I tried to work from a reference photo, and I think I got his likeness down pretty well, though he does have a pink shirt instead of a blue one. I tried to go for white, but it was a bit too Peter Griffin for my taste. I just randomized my next 2 Sims and ended up with a doctor called Warrior Cats by Erin Hunter, which was such a long name that I can't believe they even let me type it in, as well as Beast Slayer 3000, who is the most baller looking Sim possible, and I gave him this outfit because clothes are for suckers. I felt like I needed one more Sim to round off the crew, so fuck it, Scarlett Johansson is the celebrity guest for this cruise. From this ragtag group you get to pick your starting Sim, who you'll wake up as after the boat sinks during a storm. If you just made one Sim, this is the lone Sim that you'll play as throughout the rest of the game, but if you made a crew, then you'll have to continue exploring the islands to find all of them and add them to your tribe, which allows you to play as them. Unlike other games in the Sim series, once you have control over more than one Sim, you won't need to worry about taking care of all of their needs at once. Any Sim that you aren't playing as will autonomously do their own thing, taking care of their motives, gathering resources, and even traveling around the island themselves, allowing you to focus on the task at hand. And there are quite a few tasks at hand, given the fact that you've just washed up on a strange and foreboding island and need to get back to civilization. Or should I say similization? If you've never played any of the console ports before, you might be a little bit taken aback at the controls. Unlike other games in the series, you can directly control your Sims using the analog buttons to move them around and make them interact with objects and Sims. Thankfully, you can still pause and fast forward to get through tedious bouts of harvesting or long restless nights of sleep. One of the main tasks is, of course, keeping your Sim alive. Your Sim's needs, hunger, sleep, bladder, entertainment, socialization, and cleanliness must be kept filled at all times in order to keep your Sims alive alive and well, but more importantly, it keeps them energized and motivated to explore the island and complete tasks. The Sims 2 Castaway diverges heavily from the mainline Sims games in that it isn't just an open-ended life simulation. It's far more linear and quest-based, allowing you to complete goals to unlock more of the island and progress through the story. The ultimate goal of the game is to get your Sims off the island, and to do this you'll need to traverse 3 different islands: Shipwreck Island, Airplane Island, and Volcano Island in that order. There's also a secret 4th island, but we'll get to all the secret stuff later on. Now this is where the brilliance of Castaway's gameplay loop really comes into play. The islands are separated into different areas, from jungles to beaches to plains and rivers, and each new area has new resources and secrets to find, new species of fish to catch, new creatures to hunt, new natural resources to harvest from, and many new plants to try. Throughout the game you'll stumble upon a ton of plants simply labelled unidentified. You'll need to make your sim try it, which will either cause them to gain health and have a yummy little snack, or violently throw up if it's poisonous or inedible. Either way, now you've identified a plant, congratulations, and now do it 50 more times. It's not all bad though. Once you've identified a plant, you can harvest it either to eat or to craft with. Which brings us to one of the major core features of Castaway: crafting. This is a core mechanic of the game, as crafting allows you to make all kinds of important items, from tools like fishing rods and axes to shelters and beds to boats and canoes, which allow you to travel between islands. It also allows you to make cool outfits and accessories for your Sims, which you can unlock more plans for as you progress and find more resources. For example, harvesting chicken feathers for the first time allows you to make a bunch of feather clothing, banana leaves become wraparounds and halter tops, and finding metals, pearls, and even shark teeth unlock new jewelry options. That's not like an important part of the game, but I'm a sucker for some good customization, and The Sims always delivers. Now the brilliance of The Sims 2 Castaway is that escaping the island isn't just as simple as walking through all the areas, harvesting a bunch of plants, and banging up a raft with some wood. The game very carefully paces you through in a number of pretty clever ways. For example, traveling to a new area that you haven't visited often requires energy, so you'll need to rest up before exploring somewhere new. This is easy enough in the early game, where you can just simply sleep on your shitty little bed mat, but that cheap thin bedding will only rest you up so much. In the later game you'll need way more energy to explore far away or hard to reach locations, so you'll need to craft a high quality bed requiring a number of advanced materials and a higher skill level. And Sims can't sleep in the rain, so you'll probably need to build a shelter as well. It's worth noting also that oftentimes you won't just be using raw materials. A lot of the time you'll need to combine multiple materials to make something new. For example, you need 5 pieces of sisal to make a piece of rope, which is a key component for a lot of really important craft projects. And sometimes you'll need to craft a completely new item or tool to get to a new area. On Airplane Island you'll need to build a rope bridge to cross a giant chasm, and on Volcano Island you'll need to build a chisel and a hammer to move a boulder that grants you access to the next area. You'll be doing all of this while hunting, fishing, and cooking to keep your Sims well fed, as well as building and improving your shelters as the game goes on. From makeshift huts to tropical leafy mansions, or at least something akin to a mansion if you were stuck on a deserted island, and thus your standards for luxury were extremely low. Upon entering a new area or island, you'll occasionally discover a new book. These books are sort of like survival guides and will give you new goals as the game progresses. There are the obvious ones like making a raft to travel to the next island, or assembling a radio transmitter to send an SOS signal, but they also give you extra fun goals that help you just experience more of the game. Goals like befriending chimps, which yes, are a thing in this game. They're harmless and you can interact with them like Sims, which fills up your social bar, although I can't imagine the conversation will be particularly enlightening or fulfilling. Other fun goals include building a chicken coop to easily harvest feathers and, well, chicken, hunting a wild hog, catching a shark, and discovering the secret of the llama people. Which is a whole thing, again, put a pin in it, we'll get to all the secret stuff later on. Not only do the goals help you feel more fulfilled and are super satisfying for completionists, but the more you do, the more of the game you unlock, and the more you learn about the island and all of its secrets. There are multiple secret areas and bits of lore to discover, which you can find through exploring, as well as finding map pieces, statues, ancient stone tablet pieces, and other collectibles. Once all assembled, these will allow you to find secret locations with rare resources. Now that you have a basic rundown on the premise and the gameplay of The Sims 2 Castaway, let's really take a deep dive into the whole gameplay experience. Fair warning for anyone who wants to play the game, in this next section I'm just going to be doing a whole rundown of the entire game, from all of the gameplay to the story to all of the secrets and the endings, so so viewer discretion is advised. I also want to note that I've played the game tons of times on PlayStation 2, and for this video I used Dolphin Emulator, which is a Wii emulator, to get gameplay footage for the video. And if you want to play it, Dolphin Emulator is like a free, easy way to play it. It's easy to set up, but by God, the Wii controls are annoying as hell. If you can get your hands on a copy of the PlayStation 2 version, I highly recommend it. It's definitely just objectively the better, more comfortable way to play, but if you can't, then I'm sorry. If in any of the gameplay footage you see some really sluggish gameplay, or like I'm not clicking the right buttons, it's because the Wii emulator was like a nightmare to control. Just want to be transparent with you. Anyway, with all of that out of the way, let's go back to the beginning. So, after a stormy sea sinks your crew's boat and washes them up on the shores of a cluster of secluded islands, you wake up as your chosen starting sim on the aptly named First Beach. The first island is essentially like a tutorial. It has relatively few resources and you won't encounter any wild animals or rare fish, unless we're talking about chimps, which are bountiful on every island to help fill lone sim's social needs. Now's a good time to start befriending them so you can give them funny names and order them to bring you coconuts and banana leaves. You'll get 2 goal books on this island, which give you both short-term goals such as making shelter, cooking a fish, and reaching the second island, as well as more long-term goals such as reuniting all of your crewmates, building a seaworthy boat, and sending an SOS signal. Shipwreck Island is a safe, easy to traverse island that teaches you the basics of fishing, crafting, harvesting, and exploration. Here you'll build your first fire, spear your first fish, make your first basic axe for gathering wood, learn to harvest fruit and vegetables, and build a basic crafting bench. You'll also likely stumble upon your first message in a bottle, as they frequently wash up on the beach shores and can contain anything from random jokes to nonsensical ramblings to map pieces, which will come in handy later. Wooden boxes of cargo also sometimes wash up on shore, and in here you'll find things like shipments of clothes, garden gnomes, and scuba diving helmets. Shipwreck Island is pretty small. From the first beach you can access the deep jungle, rich in crafting resources like wood, bamboo, and vines, and from there you can either go to Shipwreck Lagoon or Pier Beach. Shipwreck Lagoon is one of the first real areas of interest, with a tall waterfall and a large old ship which is washed up on the beach. On it you'll find your first hieroglyphic tablet, the first of 9 in the game. Again, like the map pieces, they'll come in handy later on in the game. Pier Beach is just a basic barren beach with one special feature, a stone plinth which when clicked on allows you to craft a raft. Sorry for spitting fire just then. The raft needs quite a few materials, but you should be able to find them on the island, and as long as you're well rested you should be able to bang it up pretty quick. By this point Garphelia was decked out in some appropriately leafy new fashion pieces, had built a basic shelter and bed, and had already begun building up her skills, the most important of which are body and mechanical. She was ready for the next challenge in her island survival adventure. Once you've constructed the dubious little raft that could, your sim will paddle their way onto the second island, Airplane Island. This is where the game really starts, as Airplane Island is a far more complex and demanding place than Shipwreck Island. However, on the upside, it's incredibly rich with new resources, and many new areas, secrets, and recipes can be unlocked here. You're also likely to find 1 to 3 crewmates scattered around the island depending on how many you made at the start. My sim was overwhelmed with emotion upon reuniting with her dear friends John Arbuckle, Warrior Cats by Aaron Hunter, and Beast Slayer 3000, who despite being a little worse for wear were in good health. Unfortunately, at this point Scarlett Johansson was still nowhere to be found, and without a doubt back on dry land the sim version of Popgrave was going crazy speculating about what happened to her. You'll arrive by raft on the West Beach, and from there you'll travel into Airplane Jungle. Much like the deep jungle from the first island, this is a thick forested area with plentiful resources, though this area has one exception: the giant crashed airplane wreckage nestled among the foliage. Here you'll find a radio which not only plays banger song after banger song, not even joking here, the Castaway OST is epic as hell, but can be used to make a transmitter that can send an SOS signal later on in the game. From here you can brave the deep dark depths of the dark cave, which is covered in giant green crystals and dotted with ancient cave paintings. There's another hieroglyphic laying in front of a mysterious giant door which we can't open right now. The only way from here is up, and your sim will need to be well rested, or at least as well rested as they can be considering they're sleeping on a bed mat on a cold dark cave floor, to climb up the side of the cave. Travelling through Skull Rock Jungle and then onto the West River Plains, you'll find another survival goal book with new goals such as harvesting an egg from a chicken, which requires a coop, and farming your own vegetables, as well as building a canoe to reach the third island. At this point, if you want to progress and get to Volcano Island, you'll either have to climb across or build a rope bridge across a giant chasm. Climbing takes a huge amount of energy, and in my opinion it's honestly just easier to build the rope bridge, especially because it builds your skill and you can cross at any time after that, but you know, whatever floats your boat, pun intended. Across the chasm is the East River Plains, which has a wild boar which you can get into a brawl with. If you lose you get slammed, if you win you get a ham, that's what I always say. So anyway, Garphelia lost that fight. Moving on, the South River Jungle is accessible from here, and among another overgrown plane wreck you'll find a transmitter for your radio, which you'll need if you want to send an SOS signal. The last accessible area for now is the East Beach, and it's here that you can craft a canoe to travel to the third and final island. While Shipwreck and Airplane Island are lush tropical paradises, Volcano Island is barren and scorched, with its most notable features being its dark rocky shores, jagged steep cliff faces, and of course the giant volcano at its peak. Traveling to basically any new area here will take a significant amount of energy, which is why you'll have to craft a much better bed and start ingesting high energy foods, or just taking shots of cooked guarana and coffee beans, because even in the middle of a deserted island you can't quite kick that monster habit. That doesn't mean that the island is completely devoid of life though. If you stick around and survive here long enough, Volcano Island will reward you, from rare fish like sharks to more advanced crafting recipes and ingredients to the secret of the llama people. And discovering their secrets is actually one of your new goals, as you'll receive 2 brand new books filled with new goals for you. These books contain goals relating to the aforementioned secret of the llama people, with goals such as repairing the ceremonial forge, finding the Llama King's crown, and performing a ceremonial cliff dive. Up until now, all of the goals have been standard survival stuff, so most players at this point are probably incredibly confused, and I don't know what else to say other than it's The Sims, it's weird, just go with the flow. You'll also find your last few crewmates here, which yes means the glorious return of Scarlett Johansson, who will most certainly win Best Actor for her role in this video. In the Volcano Jungle you'll find some new points of interest, including a hot spring which your sim can relax in, and some beehives which you can harvest honey from if you have a torch to smoke them out. Otherwise, well, let's just hope your sim isn't allergic. So this is a good time to stop and talk about death. Death is present in pretty much every Sims game, but it seems to be a particularly strong theme in Castaway, despite the fact that actually dying in the game is really hard. As far as I can tell, the only ways to die in this game are from starvation or fire, and in all of my time playing this game I've never even come close to having a sim die from either of these. Have I accidentally set my brand new Leaf mansion on fire before because I left the stove pit too close to the building? Yes. Did anyone die? No. Even if one of your Sims does die, you can brew a Death Daisy potion which allows you to bring them back to life. But it's not death itself so much as it is the ever-looming presence of death and despair that gives the game a deeper, darker element. The game is goofy and light-hearted and set on a lush island with silly chimps, but it also has this dark and foreboding side, and the secret darker side is what I love about so many entries in the Sim series. Multiple crashed planes and ships scatter the islands, and you'll even find the bones of long-dead Sims resting up on the beaches or in the jungle. SOS messages from your lost crewmates wash up on shore in bottles, reminding you how desperate and scared they are. Some of the locations on the islands are pretty spooky too, from giant foggy chasms to dark mysterious caves, and forests that turn pitch black at night and are genuinely hard to navigate. The island is lashed by storms that soak your Sims, and earthquakes ravage the island. Naturally, they're extremely frequent on Volcano Island, and more than once my Sim was hit by one while at the top of the volcano, leaving her in a very precarious position. A little detail that I find hilarious and also pretty dark is that your Sim's needs bar, even when it's nearly at the very top, will almost always show a neutral face, with a happy face reserved for when every need is maxed out, which is rare. Their appearance matches how tired and unkempt they are. Their hair and beards will grow long and scraggly, and their clothes quickly become ripped up from cutting their way through jungles and scaling steep cliffs. But it's important to look at the other side of the coin, or the other side of the hieroglyphic tablet I guess, because all of this death and darkness really makes you appreciate appreciate the little things that bring Sims joy. Sitting around the fire, eating whatever you caught or harvested that day, creating dyes to bring some color to your island outfits, gradually building up your home from a shoddy little bed mat on the floor to a proper island home with plumbing and lights. Compared to other Sims games where you already start out with a bunch of money and all of the amenities that you could need, Sims Castaway really makes you feel accomplished as your focus shifts from just surviving to creating an actual life for yourself. Which brings us back to Volcano Island. From the volcano jungle you can travel to the geyser plains where you'll find the final hieroglyphic piece in front of a large stone door. Before you can travel through it, you'll need to craft a hieroglyphic stele. Steely, apparently. You learn something new every day. Anyway, you need to make one using all of the pieces, which requires a logic skill of 9, so your sim better have been working out at the library. Thankfully, Garphelia graduated from Harvard and MIT with honors, so was able to craft the stone tablet with ease and open the door. Inside is the Llama Temple interior, and to make a long story short, there are 2 ways to get here. Through the door if you have all 9 tablets, which is the easy way, or you can go the tedious way. Firstly, use a hammer and chisel to knock down a boulder, then have an extremely high energy level that is more than what you can get from sleeping to travel through, so good luck with that. Then travel through to the volcano overlook, then to the North Volcano jungle, then climb up a ton of stairs, which yet again requires a shit ton of energy, and then you'll arrive at the exterior of the temple where you climb yet more stairs and enter from the front. It's a whole thing. Trust me, you don't want to do it, just do it the half-assed way. Super responsible advice from me, you know, just do it the half-assed way. Don't take anything I say to heart ever, please. Anyway, the inside of the Llama Temple is super cool. It's really awesome to see such unique and thematic locations coming from a Sims game of all things. Suburbs and neighborhoods and, you know, empty plots of land tend to be more in EA's wheelhouse, so it's really cool to see these grand old temples and theaters that you can walk around. And here you'll find the Llama King's crown and the broken ceremonial forge, which with enough body and logic skill you can fix. I had the funniest experience with this forge. Upon fixing it, I got these upbeat bubbly notifications gleefully alerting me that I'd unlocked new resources before an earthquake immediately slammed my sim. Followed by another notification that a new island had arisen from the ocean, followed by Garphelia immediately doing the Family Guy death pose. You can't write comedic timing this good. So yeah, fixing the forge actually causes a new island, Crystal Island, to rise up out of the ocean right by Shipwreck Island. It's so close that you can actually just swim over to it from Pier Beach, and it's super cool. It has some rare resources like fine sand deposits which you can use to make glass, as well as these super cool giant green plum bobby crystals coming out of the earth. If nothing else, it's a really beautiful scenic location and a really cool reward for all the progress that you've made. From the temple interior there are 2 paths, up and out onto the volcano summit or out through the main door to the temple exterior. The latter is well worth visiting both because all of the ruined temple architecture looks super cool and because there are a ton of cocoa trees and coffee bean plants here. These can be cooked into both chocolate and coffee respectively, which will give you a huge boost of energy which you're gonna need very soon. And by very soon I mean literally right now, because from here you'll travel up to the ancient theater where there's a large overhanging rock that you'll perform a ceremonial cliff dive off of mentioned in your goal book. Only problem is you need 10 points of body skill to perform the dive, and if you're anything like poor Garphelia, you only have a measly 5 to 6 at this point. So side note, there's usually a point in pretty much every Sims game where either by virtue of the story or how you're playing it, things just evolve into complete madness. This is where it happened for me. Garphelia needed to double her body skill, and I found that the quickest way to do that was to set up camp at the top of the volcano and infinitely mine obsidian ore. It's worth noting that at this point there was no one else in Garphelia's tribe, not for lack of trying. I really tried to socialize with everyone constantly, but basically any interaction aside from chatting would elicit a negative response. John Arbuckle in particular seemed to have a real beef with Garphelia, and so she was friendless. She built a single bed, a basic shelter over top, and a fire pit, and for at least a week or so of in-game time, her routine went as follows. First, mine obsidian ore until she was physically exhausted, then sleep. Repeat this process until starving, at which point she would eat a shit ton of guava and get back to work. If it was raining and storming, which it frequently was at the volcano peak, she wouldn't be able to sleep since her shelter roof would fall into disrepair basically at a whim, so in that case she'd use the fire pit to cook up about 3 to 4 coffees, chug them, and get back to work. If her fun motive was low, she'd break out the monkey horn, which filled her fun motive really quickly, but also summoned chimps to her location. Now I don't know if this was a glitch or like a routing issue because the top of the volcano is an awkward spot, but I could hear the chimps and see their speech bubbles, but they were completely invisible.
Oh. Swift.
I chose to interpret this as canonical evidence of Garfelia's growing insanity. Her social motive would almost always be at rock bottom because socialization would take up precious ore mining time. The only time that she would ever descend back down to the island was when her hygiene motive had bottomed out, and so I would mercifully allow her a quick dip in the ocean before sending her back to the Obsidian mines. Garfelia mined well over 1,000 pieces of obsidian before finally reaching body level 10, and by that point she was a wreck. Her hair was overgrown, she was covered in flies, her bowels were probably going crazy from an exclusively coffee and guava fruit diet, and she had clearly gone mad. But it was all worth it for the epic finale, the ceremonial cliff jump. Yep, totally worth spending like 2 hours grinding for that. Thank you, Sims Castaway, very cool. From the tidal pool that you somehow safely land in, you can then head to the final beach where 2 giant llama statues lay buried in the sand. Clicking on them allows you to craft a catamaran, by far the most complex project in the game, requiring multiple advanced materials. You can escape the island by gathering the materials and building the catamaran, or if you've fully assembled the airplane radio and transmitter, you can take it to the volcano summit and send an SOS signal. Doing either will end the game, showing a frankly awful looking cutscene of your crew's rescue and showing them getting back to normal life, stressed out by life back in the big city and longing for the simplicity of the island again. But we're not done being castaways yet, and thankfully after these cutscenes play you have the option to stay on the island to free play, unlock secrets, or finish goals. Which brings us back to the llama crown from earlier and that mysterious giant door in the cave on the first island. Yeah, remember that? Wow, that was like 20 minutes ago. Anyway, the crown unlocks the door, revealing Hidden Lagoon, a very pretty area where you can build and frolic and sim around to your heart's content. There's not really much to do here, and honestly it's a bit anticlimactic unfortunately, but it will unlock some cool new clothing schematics and give you a really nice place to build if you just want to free play. Next is the pirate map. Throughout the game you'll stumble upon map pieces in bottles as well as in random locations. To find the final map piece you'll need to fish up a shark at the tidal pool, which can only be done with a fishing rod. Your sim may be a master survivalist, but they're not quite good enough to spare a shark with a pointy stick. Once the map is completed you can go back to that suspicious looking rock on Airplane Island and head on through to Pirate's Cove where you'll find Pirate Bear Bed's treasure. A cool pirate outfit and sword await you within, and upon finding the secret you will have uncovered every area in the game. From here, well, you can choose to either get rescued or continue to live on the island building up your tropical empire, but either way your days of struggling to survive are well and truly over, thus closing the final chapter of The Sims 2 Castaway. But wait, that's not the final chapter at all because there's still so much to talk about. Isn't that great? Can you tell that I'm obsessed with this game? I'm sure it's not obvious or anything. First, I want to give some more thoughts on this game because while I absolutely adore it and it's super nostalgic for me because I used to play this all the time as a kid, it definitely has its flaws. The controls are unbearably clunky at times. It's basically impossible to talk to other Sims or chimps because you can't queue actions, and as soon as you finish a convo with them they'll go racing off like they heard there was a free pool ladder giveaway. With how cluttered a lot of the environments are, it's also really hard to get the right angles to interact with things, Sims get stuck, and the camera is average at best, especially in cramped areas. I also think that some of the grinding, especially in the later game, could be paced out a lot more, as evidenced by my obsidian mining nightmare, as well as the dispersion of some of the skills. Basically the only skills you'll need are body, mechanical, and logic, leaving skills like cooking and charisma completely redundant. It would have been cool if there was a charisma check that you had to pass to get to a new area, or a special dish that you had to cook to unlock something, you know, anything to make them not pointless. The game is definitely glitch heavy as well, with chimps and even Sims sometimes turning invisible, and the camera in the bottom left that shows off your Sim's face is a bit nightmarish. But there's also so much to love about this game. It's literally a Sims game set on a weird, spooky, mysterious series of islands in the middle of nowhere. It's Tom Hanks, but Tom Hanks is a Sim. There's pig fighting and chicken trapping and building bridges over chasms and befriending monkeys and making clothes made out of vines. It's pure insanity, and whenever The Sims embraces that madness is when it's at its best. For a PlayStation 2 game, it's also really beautiful, at least in my opinion. strange crystal islands, thick looming forests with canopies so tall you can't even see them. There are several vantage points throughout the game that give you beautiful views, and watching the sky as it changes from night to day brings you that special liminal sense of both peace and loneliness that only older PlayStation games can. There's darkness and weirdness on these islands, yes, but there's also so much beauty as well, so much hilarity, and at its core that's what Sims games are all about. Lastly, before we wrap up, I just want to mention the other spin-offs of Castaway since I briefly mentioned them at the very start of the video. Castaway Stories is the third and final entries in the Sim Stories series, say that 10 times fast, which a lot of people actually don't know about. The first two games were Life Stories and Pet Stories, and they were essentially adapted versions of mainline Sims 2 games run on a modified engine for more inexperienced players and or those with laptops or lower end systems. A lot of complexity was taken out of the game, controls and mechanics were simplified, and these games had story campaigns that you could play through. They were basically meant to be like baby's first Sims 2 game, and they didn't really see a whole lot of success, as evidenced by the fact that Castaway was the third and final installment and they didn't make any more. Another spin-off was the Nintendo DS version, which predictably looked like arse and had a more linear story with minigames and a set cast of characters. And lastly, the Nokia phone version, which even more predictably looked like even more arse. Ugh, this dude looks like he's wearing someone else's skin. This version was obviously far more limited than any other version, mostly consisting of gathering and fetch quests on a small pixelated island, but honestly I was surprised how many features they fit onto a Nokia phone. I mean, it's terrible, but it's also kind of impressive at the same time. If you haven't played The Sims 2 Castaway, please do it. I mean like the PlayStation version, not the Nokia version. But whatever floats your boat, I guess. Like any game in the Sims series, it's totally bonkers and a little bit weird, but that's what makes it so fun. Of course it has its flaws, but this is EA we're talking about. What Sims game isn't a little broken and nightmarish? It adds a nice little element of surprise. Will my game crash or will it play fine? Only the tides know. And it really does have a banging soundtrack. Keep Me in Your Pocket by Charlotte Martin, consistent banger. Thank you for sticking around and listening to me waffle on about one of my favorite childhood games. I've been wanting to cover The Sims Castaway for ages, and one of my goals this year, one of my resolutions if you will, is to cover all of The Sims spin-off series, like all the console ports, Medieval, My Sims, etc., all of that stuff, because I find them really funny. They tend to just be extremely bonkers, even more so than the mainline series. So anyway, that's one of my goals, and I've been wanting to talk about this one specifically for ages because I played the shit out of it as a kid, so this was the perfect way to kick that off. And yeah, like I said, I want to cover more, so expect to see more in the future. Medieval's next because I haven't played it and it looks insane. If any of you have played The Sims 2 Castaway, please share your thoughts, please share your stories. How bonkers was your island journey? Did your sim go mad like mine did? How many chimps did you befriend? I'd really love to hear. I absolutely love this game and I feel like I don't hear people talking about it enough, so I would love to hear you guys talking about it so I don't feel so alone in being obsessed with it. Anyway, I'm going to stop talking now. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for all the support in 2023, and I'm really excited for more videos this year, hopefully more consistent, a bunch of fun new topics, and yeah, honestly just making videos because that's what I love doing, and thank you so much for supporting me in doing that. Anyway, I said I was going to stop talking like ages ago, so now I'm going to stop talking. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I really hope to see you in the next one. Bye! If you heard that sound, yes, that was me dropping my phone on the floor so I could wave. Bye! A huge thank you to my Garfield overlords over on Patreon. Zoe Mars, Sophie H, Thy Heavenly, Leanne O, Hazy, Jet Secret, Oliver Brains, Blue Mayfeld, Katrina Likes 5e Stuff, Fitzy, Michelle Olsen, Matt LRJ, A Riddle Wrapped in Enigma Hidden by Question Mark, Chicory, SHSL Sunsun, Doug, Dana Homegardner, Charlie B, Simon, Xavier Arajo, Helm Hamburger Hand, Dozo Blint, Sheriff Whiskey, Astrian Vortex, Jesse Chisholm, Lee XX, Grip Gunderson, and Joe Bradshaw. Thank you guys so much for supporting me. It means the world. If you want to join these guys over on Patreon, the link will be in the description. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye!